When Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean in 1492, he sparked a wave of exploration and conquest that forever changed the lives of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. In the centuries that followed, the indigenous peoples of the Americas were subjected to violence, disease, and displacement as the European colonizers sought to gain control of the land and its resources. Today, the indigenous peoples of the Americas are working to reclaim their heritage and preserve their cultures in the face of continuing challenges. The history of the indigenous peoples of the Americas is one of strength and resilience in the face of incredible adversity. It is a history of a people who have endured and continue to endure great challenges, but who have never lost their connection to the land and their cultures. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have a long and proud history that deserves to be celebrated and remembered. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have a long and rich history. They have lived on the continents of North and South America for thousands of years and have developed their own unique cultures and customs. The first people to settle in the Americas are thought to have migrated from Asia across the Bering Strait. It is believed that they then began to migrate southwards into North and South America. Over time, these early settlers began to develop their own cultures and customs, which were passed down through the generations. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have a deep connection to the land. They have traditionally lived off the land and have developed a deep respect for nature. This is reflected in their cultures, which place a great emphasis on harmony with the natural world. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have faced many challenges in recent years. The arrival of European settlers in the Americas brought with it disease and violence, which decimated many indigenous populations. In addition, the indigenous peoples have been dispossessed of their traditional lands, and their cultures and languages have been suppressed. Despite the challenges they have faced, the indigenous peoples of the Americas have maintained their proud traditions and cultures. They continue to strive for recognition and respect, and to preserve their unique heritage for future generations. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have a long and rich history that spans thousands of years. They are a diverse group of people with a wide range of cultures and traditions. The first people to arrive on the continent were the nomadic hunters and gatherers who migrated from Asia over 20,000 years ago. These early people slowly spread across the continent, adapting. The first people to arrive in the Americas were the Paleo-Indians. The name Paleo-Indians refers to a period in human history when people first began to inhabit the Americas. The exact date of the arrival of the first Paleo-Indians is unknown, but it is believed that they arrived sometime between 12,000 and 10,000 BCE. The Paleo-Indians were a nomadic people, and they lived off of the land. They hunted animals for food and used the animals' hides for clothing and shelter. The Paleo-Indians were also skilled in making tools and weapons out of stone, bone, and wood. Over time, the Paleo-Indians began to adapt to the environment around them. They developed new ways of hunting and gathering food. They also started to build permanent settlements. By 5000 BCE, the Paleo-Indians had spread throughout the Americas. The Paleo-Indians were the first people to arrive in the Americas, and they laid the foundation for all subsequent cultures in the Americas. The first indigenous peoples in North America were the Athabascan speakers. They occupied a large area of land stretching from Alaska to the southwestern United States. Athabascan speakers were divided into two groups, the Northern Athabascans and the Southern Athabascans. The Northern Athabascans were also known as the Athapascans, or Athapascans. They lived in Alaska, northwestern Canada, and parts of the western United States. The Southern Athabascans occupied a large area of land stretching from Arizona to Texas. They were also known as the Apacheans or Apaches. Athabascan speakers were nomadic people who lived in small bands. They were hunters and gatherers and lived off the land. They were also skilled artisans who crafted tools and weapons from stone, bone, and wood. Athabascan speakers were experts in survival and were able to adapt to their changing environment. The Athabascan language is a member of the Na-Dene language family. The Athabascan language family is divided into two groups, the Northern Athabascan languages and the Southern Athabascan languages. The Northern Athabascan languages are spoken in Alaska, northwestern Canada, and parts of the western United States. The Southern Athabascan languages are spoken in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and parts of Mexico. Athabascan speakers are believed to have migrated to North America from Asia. The Athabascans were the first indigenous peoples to settle in North America. They were followed by the Inuit and the Aleut. The Athabascans were the first to arrive in North America and the last to leave. The Inuit people first arrived in North America around 1,000 years ago, coming over from Siberia via the Bering Strait. Unlike other Native American groups, the Inuit were never collectively referred to as Indians by the Europeans. Instead, they were given the name Eskimo, which is thought to mean eaters of raw meat in the Algonquin language. The Inuit would eventually spread across the Arctic region of North America, inhabiting parts of modern-day Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and even reaching as far down as Labrador. The Inuit way of life revolved around hunting, fishing, and gathering. The Inuit were expert hunters, often using dogs and kayaks to help them in their pursuits. They would also fish for food, using both nets and hooks, and would often dry and store their catch to ensure a steady supply of food during the long winter months. In addition to meat, the Inuit also gathered berries, plants, and seaweed to supplement their diet. From a European perspective, the Inuit were seen as a barbaric and primitive people. This was largely due to their practice of hunting seal and whale, which were seen as valuable resources by the Europeans. In addition, the Inuit were also known to eat raw meat and blubber, which was considered to be disgusting by European standards. However, the Inuit were a highly adaptable and resourceful people, and they managed to thrive in the harsh Arctic climate for centuries. There are many different indigenous peoples living in the Americas today. In North America, there are the Inuit, who live in the Arctic regions of Canada, Alaska, and Greenland, the First Nations, who live across Canada, and the Native Americans, who live in the United States and Mexico. In Central and South America, there are the Maya, who live in parts of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, the Inca, who live in Peru, and the Amazonian tribes, who live in the Amazon rainforest. Each of these indigenous peoples have their own unique customs and traditions. For example, the Inuit have a rich culture of storytelling, music, and dance. The First Nations are known for their intricate beadwork and wood carvings, and the Maya are known for their architectural achievements, including the construction of pyramids and temples. Despite the many differences between these indigenous peoples, they all share a common history of oppression and marginalization. For centuries, they have been displaced from their ancestral lands, forced into assimilation, and subjected to violence and discrimination. However, they have also fought back against these injustices, and today, they are working to preserve their cultures and reclaim their place in the world. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have all made unique contributions to the history of this continent. Although they have often been marginalized and oppressed, they have nevertheless played a significant role in the development of the Americas. Indigenous peoples have always been creative and resourceful, finding ways to adapt to their environment and make the most of their resources. They have developed sophisticated cultures and civilizations, with their own distinct languages, religions, and traditions. Indigenous peoples have often been at the forefront of resistance to colonization and exploitation. They have fought for their land and their rights, and in doing so, they have helped to shape the history of the Americas. Today, indigenous peoples are still making valuable contributions to the Americas. They are working to preserve their cultures and traditions, and to build a better future for themselves and their communities. The article, A History of the Indigenous Peoples of the Americas, gives a brief overview of the history of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. It covers the period from the arrival of the first humans in the Americas to the present day. The article covers the topics of the arrival of the first humans, the development of civilizations, the impact of the European colonization, and the contemporary situation of indigenous peoples in the Americas. The article provides a valuable history of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. It is a concise and informative resource that can be used to learn about the long and complex history of this region.